What happens when an offhand answer can turn your entire life upside down? In downtown Chicago, where skyscrapers pierce the sky, Isabel Navarro weaves across the glossy floor of Étoile, the city's most exclusive restaurant, her shoes pinching and her smile strained. This server hides a storm of exhaustion, towering stacks of checks, aching feet, and the burden of saving her brother Matteo from a life-threatening illness. But on one stormy night, a mysterious diner asks, "What do you want more than anything in the world?" Her half-joking reply, "A day off," unlocks secrets and creates a chance at something entirely new. Can fate truly be rewritten? Dear friends, brace yourselves for a story that will stir your heart. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is. We want to know which corner of the world you're joining us from. Isabel Navarro ran as if in a race with no finish line. At 25, she skimmed across Étoile's gleaming marble floor, her too-tight flats chafing her heels with every tortured step. Her black uniform clung to her frame, heavy with the scent of truffle oil and desperation, as though a curse weighed on her shoulders, reminding her she was nothing more than a wraith in this world of luxury. Night after night, she served Chicago's elite, fund managers with smug smiles, tech moguls glued to their phones, influencers flaunting designer bags. Their generous tips, if they came at all, barely covered her rent. Yet few noticed her, her trembling hands, her weary eyes. Vincent, the manager with a plastic grin as fake as the potted orchids scattered through the dining room, prowled like a vulture, ready to pounce on any mistake. "Table 8 needs wine, Navarro," he barked, his cold tone drowning out the crystal's tinkle. "And try not to look like you're at a funeral." Isabel nodded, lips pressed together. But inside, a storm was raging. She wanted to scream, to hurl the tray against the wall. Instead, she poured in silence, the chandelier's light dancing mockingly across the wine glass. In Isabel's mind, every ledger was an IOU, each page filled with numbers that crushed her. $1,200 for her cramped Pilsen apartment, its walls blotched and ever damp. A ComEd shut-off notice shoved into her purse, a silent indictment, and the largest and most burdensome sum: the cost of Matteo's next experimental treatment. At 15, her brother should have been shooting hoops or stressing over geometry. Instead, Matteo was a fixture in hospital lobbies, where antiseptic scents and beeping machines smothered hope. His once starry eyes now dimmed by a rare neurological disease, each step a battle. And each day, Isabel fought for him. She smiled at diners, the forced curve of her mouth a mask hiding a bleeding heart. Every "yes, sir," she uttered, was a silent vow to Matteo. "I will not quit." Yet inside she was shattering. Each shift felt like a blade slicing through her pride and hope. By 11 p.m., her feet throbbed as though her bones begged for rest. A blister burned on her left heel, a fiery period in her indictment of pain. She drifted through the labyrinth of tables, a ghost in black, her hands pouring wine with machine-like precision, while her mind wandered far away, tallying numbers that would never add up. Isabel was more than tired. She was spent, like a candle burned down to its wick, its light flickering before extinguishing. She dreamed of a day without dawn alarms, of not counting pennies for the train, of not smiling when her heart wanted to cry. But that dream felt as out of reach as the vintage bottles she poured. Beautiful to behold, untouchable. Matteo was the ember that kept her standing, yet each night in her shabby apartment she stared at her reflection and saw a stranger. An Isabel who'd forgotten she once dreamed, who once believed life could be different. She was sinking deeper with each passing day. The shore of salvation, if it existed, was a distant horizon, just beyond reach. But even in darkness, the smallest spark can change everything. Isabel had no idea that in a few hours, a stranger would step into her world, asking a question that would upend it all. Table 14 sat tucked in Etoile's quietest corner, where the soft glow of the chandeliers never reached the clamor of lavish banquets. It was reserved for patrons who didn't need to flaunt their wealth, and tonight only one man occupied it, Nathaniel Kane. He exuded a silent authority, as if the entire room bent to acknowledge his presence. His charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, clung to him like a second skin. The Patek Philippe on his wrist caught the light, a subtle whisper amid the neighboring tables of ostentatious Rolexes. The menu before him lay untouched. His steel, cold gray eyes watched the dance of servers and diners with the patience of a predator waiting for its moment. Isabel Navarro approached, her feet throbbing in two tight flats, each step a reminder of her 16 consecutive shifts crushing her spirit. She inhaled, summoned a professional smile despite the leaden weight in her chest, and asked, "Are you ready to order, sir?" Her voice was smooth, yet inside a storm roared. Nathaniel did not answer at once. He lifted his gaze, locking eyes with her as if seeing through her fragile mask. "You've been here since noon," he said. Not a question, but a cold statement, his baritone resonating like waves crashing on stone. Isabel froze, her breath caught. Most diners never noticed her at all, much less how many hours she'd spent trapped in this gilded cage. Anxiety twisted her stomach. Had she done something wrong? Was he an undercover critic? A demanding VIP? "We've been short-staffed tonight," she lied, her mouth dry, voice trembling like an overtuned string. Nathaniel leaned forward, his gaze razor-sharp as though he could slice through every layer of her defenses. "That's not what I asked," he said slowly, each word a hammer blow. "Tell me, what do you want more than anything in this world?" The question exploded in the cold exchange of étoiles, absurd, out of place and merciless, as though he had invaded her innermost sanctum. The professional wall Isabel had built, brick by brick of restraint and endurance, crumbled in an instant. The exhaustion of 16 back-to-back shifts, the weight of Mateo's illness, the shame of overdue bills plastered on her fridge, all surged up like a tidal wave. She wanted to look away, to stay silent, but something in his eyes, genuine curiosity entwined with challenge, pulled her in. A bitter laugh tore from her lips, raw and uncontrolled. "A day off," she said, her tone cutting, each syllable a self-inflicted wound. "Just one day when I don't have to smile when I want to scream. One day when my feet don't feel like they're on fire. One day when I don't have to count every penny for the train home." Her confession hung between them, naked and real, a freshly opened wound. Isabel felt her blood drain. She had said too much. Her heart pounded, like prey caught in a trap, waiting for Vincent's reprimand or the collapse of the job she hated but could not afford to lose. But Nathaniel remained still. He only looked at her, a flicker of something inscrutable in his gaze. Not pity nor contempt, but a strange acknowledgement, as if he saw the dying spark inside her. He nodded slowly, as though noting a precious secret. "I understand," he said, his voice gentle, almost comforting. Then, as though the moment had never happened, he glanced down at the menu. "I'll have the seared salmon and a bottle of Chateau Margaux." Isabel turned away, her hands trembling as she set the tray down. She felt as though she'd crossed an invisible line where safety and danger mingled. Nathaniel Kane was not merely a diner. He was a question unanswered, a wind blowing into her life. And though she did not yet know it, this moment would be the beginning of events that changed everything. Her alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m., a shrill declaration of war, as dawn's pale light crept through her Pilsen apartment window, painting weary streaks across peeling walls scented with mildew like a curse. Isabel Navarro rose from bed, every muscle aching as if crushed beneath her 2 a.m. shift. Each joint groaned. Each step reminded her of the blistering pain in her too tight flats. In the cramped kitchen, Clara, her nurse-student best friend, sat with a textbook open, her eyes bright with optimism despite life's darkness. "You look like you've just dueled the world and lost," Clara teased without looking up. Isabel murmured as she shook out her chipped coffee cup, her mind buzzing with Nathaniel Kane's question and the fear she might lose her job over that rare, raw answer. She drew the curtains and found, by the crack of light, something she hadn't noticed returning home last night. A slim, glossy black envelope, no stamp, no address, lying like a secret waiting to be opened. Her hand trembled as she lifted it, her fingertips gliding over its velvety surface. Heart pounding, she slit the seal. Inside, no letter, only a jet-black card, cold as metal, embossed in shimmering silver. Isabel Navarro. Beneath, the American Express Centurion emblem, a legendary card whispered about at Etoile, reserved for billionaires. A small slip fluttered out, 5 words typed in elegant script. "You deserve a day off." Signed, N.K. Nathaniel Kane. Isabel's breath caught. Clara sprang up, eyes wide, voice strangled. "Isabel, what the hell is that?" But Isabel barely heard, her gaze fixed on the card, her mind reeling. Was it real? A prank? A trap? Yet one image shone clear. Mateo, her brother, his dimming eyes and frail body ravaged by that rare neurological disease. She did not hesitate. This card was not for her, but for him. Like a warrior seizing her final weapon, she called a luxury boutique, a $1,500 cashmere blanket, soft as a cloud, to warm Mateo's cold nights, then an $8,000 adjustable hospital bed so he could sit without agony. Next, a $2,000 iPad Pro to bring him movies and escape the hospital's harsh reality. Then came the boldest move. She rang Rush Medical Center, her voice shaking yet resolute, and laid down a $60,000 deposit for Mateo's next clinical trial. A fragile hope, but all she had. Each transaction sliced through her fear, yet reignited a stubborn flame inside her. She pictured Mateo smiling, his eyes bright once again. But the joy was fleeting. Back at Etoile, Vincent's icy stare pinned her like a hawk spotting prey. Whispers trailed behind her, accusing insider favors with Nathaniel. She felt hunted, a wounded animal among wolves. Then, during dinner rush, disaster struck. Balancing a heavy tray, sweat stinging her eyes, she collided with Vincent. Accidentally, of course. The tray tipped. Porcelain shattered on the marble floor, the crash sounding like a verdict. Diners fell silent, all eyes on her. "Clear your things and get out, Navarro," Vincent commanded, his tone as cold as ice. Isabel stood amid the wreckage, her uniform spattered with sauce, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She was fired, her reputation in ruins. That black card, once a miracle, now felt like a curse dragging her into a deeper abyss. Yet inside her, a small flame still burned, the flame of Matteo, and she knew, no matter what, she would not give up. Dear viewers, take a moment to breathe or sip some water before the next twist, and please let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always exciting to see you joining us from every corner of the world. Comment 1 if this story moved you, so we can keep bringing you more incredible tales. Isabel Navarro huddled on a cold wooden bench in Grant Park. Her breath mingled with the damp air off Lake Michigan. The lake glittered under city lights, beautiful and deceitful, like a promise forever out of reach. She clutched her belongings, a few pens, an old notebook, and her now useless Étoile ID badge, as if they could shield her from the storm of rage and panic tearing at her chest. Her job, the only means she had, was gone. Her fragile reputation stained by vicious whispers. The Centurion card she once believed magical now felt like a blade, cutting deeper than she ever imagined. She closed her eyes, trying to banish the memory of shattered dishes, Vincent's hissed orders, and colleagues' scornful stares. But her mind returned again and again to Matteo, her brother with trembling hands and the rare smiles stolen by that cruel neurological disease. She had done everything for him. Every exhausting shift, every forced smile, every penny saved. And now, she had nothing but a fear that strangled her. Did she have the strength to go on? Footsteps approached, soft but determined on the gravel path. Ms. Navarro. Nathaniel Kane's calm, deep voice rippled through the night air like a wave on the lake. Isabel looked up. Her heart pounded. He stood there, not in his lavish suit, but in a gray cashmere sweater and black coat, looking younger, more approachable, yet still radiating the power that seemed to shrink the world around him. She sprang to her feet, the box of her few possessions slipping from her hands with a harsh clatter. Anger flared, drowning her fear. She wanted to scream at him, to blame him for everything. A day off she never truly had, her stolen job, her collapsing world. Nathaniel did not flinch before her fury. His gray eyes, cold but weary, held her gaze as though accustomed to accusations. "I know what happened at the restaurant wasn't your fault," he said, his tone steady yet powerful. "Vincent will find you another position by tomorrow." Isabel staggered, as if the ground had shifted beneath her. The weight of his words, the power to alter someone's fate with a single sentence, sent chills through her, but it did not soothe her anger. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling and sharp as a blade. "This card, this intervention, what's the price? What do you want from me?" For the first time, Nathaniel looked tired, as if carrying a burden too long. He sat on the bench beside her, leaving space out of respect, his gaze drifting over the shimmering water. Then he spoke, his voice low as a confession. He revealed the brutal truth. Her father, Javier Navarro, had been a brilliant engineer at Novatech, the startup Nathaniel co-founded 15 years ago. Javier's elegant code was stolen, or so Marcus Reed, Nathaniel's partner, falsely claimed. Nathaniel, at 27, inexperienced and fearful, had chosen silence to protect the company, forcing Javier to lose everything: his career, his reputation, and ultimately his health. Javier's heart failed when Isabel was 19, leaving her to pick up the shattered pieces of their family. The Centurion card, once her lifeline of hope, now tasted of her father's blood. She drew it from her pocket, her fingers shaking, and hurled it at Nathaniel. It skidded across the gravel, glinting under the lamplight like an accusation. Nathaniel did not retrieve it. He met her eyes, heavy with guilt. "Mateo's trial is funded by the Kane Foundation," he said, each word striking like a hammer. "If you refuse me, you refuse your brother's best chance at hope." Isabel stood frozen, as though her world had collapsed again. Anger collided with her fierce love for Mateo, ripping her heart apart. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks, warm against the chill of Lake Michigan's night air. She wanted to flee, to deny it all, but the image of Mateo, his dimmed eyes still trusting in her, held her in place. She was trapped, not by Nathaniel's power, but by her own heart. The black card lay on the ground, a bridge between a painful past and an uncertain future, and Isabel knew, no matter how much she ached, she could not turn her back on her brother's hope. Isabel Navarro stood shivering in the biting cold of Grant Park, city lights dancing on her tear-filled eyes like lost stars. The black card lay on the gravel, glinting with accusation, and also a door to hope for Mateo. Her chest constricted, caught between burning rage and fierce love for her brother. Each heartbeat a battle between the pride that wanted to reject Nathaniel Kane and the fear of losing her last chance to save Mateo. With trembling fingers, she bent and touched the card's icy surface, then picked it up, its weight as heavy as fate itself. She met Nathaniel's gaze, her eyes blazing, yet her voice resolute, like an oath. This was not forgiveness. This was a pact. "My condition," she said, each word sharp as a blade, "is that you fund everything Mateo needs, his trials, his treatments, everything. And you will tell me the truth about my father, who he really was, not the shadow you destroyed." Nathaniel nodded slowly, his gray eyes reflecting deep relief, as though an invisible burden had just been lifted from his shoulders. In the weeks that followed, Isabel became a general on the medical battlefield. Every decision an arrow aimed straight at Mateo's disease. She arranged his clinical trial at Rush Medical Center with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. She rented a small apartment near the hospital where sunlight filtered through the windows, offering warmth to Mateo's long days. Each time she wheeled him down the gleaming hallway, she felt a fragile spark of hope, just enough to keep her standing. Nathaniel fulfilled his promise quietly, almost invisibly. Bills vanished before her eyes. Appointments with top physicians were scheduled as if summoned by a snap of his fingers. Every week, they met, not in opulent offices, but in simple places far from his world. Once, in a quiet corner of the Art Institute of Chicago, the gallery's soft light soothed their tension. Another time, aboard a ferry on the Chicago River, the cool mist on her face as Nathaniel spoke. He told her about Javier Navarro, her father, with a reverence that made her heart ache. Javier, the brilliant engineer whose elegant code read like poetry, the nights he spent in Novatech's small office, eyes alight with triumph over a stubborn algorithm, the way he shared cheap coffee with colleagues. These stories fitted together like puzzle pieces, restoring an image of Javier that Isabel had only known through his final broken years, a man shattered and robbed of his light. Each tale Nathaniel told was a stroke of his brush, painting her father not as a failure, but as a betrayed genius. Yet it was also a painful reminder that the man before her was part of that betrayal. Isabel listened, her heart torn between gratitude and resentment. She could not forgive, not yet, but nor could she deny the strange bond forming between them. With each encounter, she saw Nathaniel not merely as a billionaire wielding infinite power, but as a lonely man trapped by the mistake of his 27-year-old self, whose cowardice had silenced injustice. He looked at her, and she knew he recognized in her the same fire her father had, the unquenchable resilience that life had tried to bury. Meanwhile, Matteo began to respond to treatment. For the first time in years, his eyes sparkled again, like stars reclaiming the night sky. When he smiled, weak but genuine, Isabel felt her own heart lighten, as though part of her burden had lifted. Yet she never forgot the cost of this miracle. Every paid invoice, every scheduled appointment bound her more tightly to Nathaniel and to her family's painful legacy. She kept the black card locked in her pocket, no longer a symbol of salvation, but a covenant inked in blood and tears. She knew that even if Matteo recovered, her journey with Nathaniel and her father's legacy had only just begun. 3 months passed, and a spark of hope ignited in the darkness. At Rush, the doctors reported, Matteo's metrics had improved significantly. Not a miraculous cure, but a small flame bright enough to light the path ahead. Isabel felt her heart grow lighter, as though part of her burden had lifted. She did not text Nathaniel Kane. Instead, she walked into downtown Chicago, where Apex Solutions' glass and steel tower pierced the sky. Unannounced, but now, Isabel Navarro was the key to every security door, as if she'd become part of the world she once only watched from outside. Nathaniel stood by his office window, his silhouette merging with the city's glittering carpet below. Sunlight streamed through, highlighting the fatigue lines around his gray eyes. When Isabel entered, he turned, and with a single glance read the good news in her eyes. A brilliance laced with determination. She was no longer the exhausted server in black. She was a woman with a burning fire inside. "The treatment is working," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, each word a declaration of victory. Then she paused, drew a deep breath as though summoning all her courage. "I realize one thing. Surviving isn't enough. I want to build, just as my father did." She stepped to his desk, her worn shoes whispering on the gleaming wood. In her mind, Javier Navarro, the engineer with the infectious smile whose legacy was stolen, stood vivid, driving her forward. "I'm going to college," she said, her tone unwavering. "I want to finish the degree I abandoned. I want to understand how your world works, business, technology, and I want you to teach me." It wasn't a plea. It was a demand, a declaration from someone who had chosen to rise from the ashes of her past. Nathaniel studied her, and for the first time, a genuine smile lit his face, warming his usually steely gray eyes. It was like a crack in the fortress he'd built around himself, revealing a man who'd been hurt, who'd suffered loss. "That's the easiest deal I've ever made," he said, his deep voice infused with profound respect. In that moment, Isabel was no longer the server he'd met at Etoile, nor just the daughter of the man he'd wronged. She was Javier Navarro's legacy guardian, turning his redemption money into the foundation of a future she would shape herself. This isn't a fairy tale. There are no perfect endings or brilliant coronations. It's a painful pact, signed on a cold bench by Lake Michigan between two people bound by guilt and hope. But it is a beginning. A day off, born from a moment of utter exhaustion, had unlocked a history of lies, crime, and possibility. Isabel's story proves that kindness, however complicated, can rewrite fate. It whispers that the past need not be a prison, and that a new start can be negotiated, even when all seems impossible. If Isabel's journey moved you, please like this video. That's how you help us spread inspiration. Share this story with anyone who needs a boost, And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to catch our next stories. In the comments, tell us, if you had a black card, what would you do?